All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Ullman, and it is finally fight week. Today we've got the UFC 311 preview. It feels like forever since we've had a pay-per-view. That big fight feel is finally back. We've got a fantastic card here in LA. It's going to be awesome. And it's topped with Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan. I mean, just so good. Just such a good fight. This is going to be, doesn't matter where it takes place, doesn't matter who's in what position. These guys are dangerous from literally everywhere. It's going to be so good. So looking back, 2019, these guys fought. It was a unanimous decision win for Islam. But if we look at the situation, Islam had been in the UFC. This was Tsarukyan's debut, and Tsarukyan took the fight on a short notice. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but interesting scenario, very good fight. But you look at Islam Makhachev. He's now beat Dan Hooker, King Green, Charles Oliveira. He's beat Volk twice. Now he's beat Poirier. So this guy's on an absolute roll. I mean, he's cementing himself as one of the great 55ers of all time. He's cementing himself as one of the top pound-for-pound guys right now, and probably of all time if he keeps this up. And he's challenging his guy Khabib for all the titles that Khabib held, right? So, I mean, just an absolutely incredible, dependable champion in a division where it's very tough to be dependable against a lot of guys who have been here for a while and are really good fighters. And it's included everything. Submissions, TKOs. Okay, he can do it in different ways. How about for Arman? Arman Tsarukyan has kind of bursted on the scene as of late. He's a fun personality. He's a fantastic fighter. Does a lot of the same things as Islam. Does them really just as well. We're going to find out to what level in this fight, obviously. But he's been waiting for this title shot probably ever since he lost to Islam. He said it after that fight. It felt like a moment where he finally knew, like, I can do this. I can compete with these guys. We knew how good Islam was, right? So his most recent loss is to Mateusz Gamrot in 2022. But he responded well, brutally knocked out Dariush to end 2023. And then that UFC 300 win against Charles Oliveira. What a fight that was. We know how good Charles is. And Arman Tsarukyan, I mean, he didn't dominate him, but truly such an impressive win. Such an impressive win. So like I said, when these guys fought, it was Arman's first fight in the UFC. Took it on 3 weeks' notice. Okay? Lots of grappling in the fight. Important to understand, they've both gotten significantly better in the stand-up since that fight. Okay, it was extremely competitive, and then Arman kind of tired out in the third round, and Islam took advantage of that. But first 2 rounds, back and forth grappling, extremely excited. Lots of wrestling, right? Not much striking from either guy. A few head kicks just to keep Islam, humble towards the head. But overall, I mean, a few compromised positions that Arman found himself in, but got out with ease. I mean, it was 50-50 the first 2 rounds. It could go any way. And people were like, oh my goodness, because we knew how good Islam was. Okay, so if you're using the first fight to say Islam Makhachev, obviously beat him by unanimous decision, I would rethink that. Here's how Islam wins. You got to keep your distance. You got to use leg kicks. Don't worry about the guillotine, right? And shoot takedowns as much as you can. Shoot them as much as you can. Trust me, either of these guys can lose like that. So the hope is that neither of them comes in and is worried about every single move they make, because these guys are so good in compromised positions. Like Arman Tsarukyan, 99% of guys get choked out by Charles Oliveira in the situation he was in at UFC 300. He didn't. He needs to remember that. His neck strength is incredible. These guys' abilities to not get finished is so good. How about the durability of Islam on the feet against Poirier, right? Like, we saw that. And these guys need to remember, we cannot fight this thing scared. without a doubt, though, for Islam, toughest test in the UFC. Here's the odds. Minus 390 for Islam, plus 290 for Arman. I don't love that. Man, I think that should be a lot closer. Arman's going to be tough competition. Here's how Arman wins. You got to be aggressive, right? You cannot let the fear of the big mistake keep you from being aggressive. If you let that happen, you'll just lose by unanimous decision. Okay, he's one of the toughest guys to submit and needs to remember that. And Islam can, I think Islam can win if Islam can keep his distance up top. But if Arman is so effective in close striking exchanges. I mean, we know how good Charles is on the feet and on the ground. And in my opinion, Arman outstruck him and out-wrestled him. So, I'm picking Arman. I think Arman wins by split decision. I think it's a very, very close fight. I think, and the rounds, sometimes you get a close fight and it's like, it's clearly two there, close fifth or whatever. The rounds in this thing are going to be close because it's not going to be Islam gets on top and dominates the round. It's going to be back and forth. And so it's going to be one of those where you could get some wild scorecards because it's not going to be, clearly Islam won 1, 2, and 5. I mean, the rounds are going to be so close, in my opinion, so hard to judge. This is not a fight where Islam's just going to dominate. And I think Arman will win via split decision. Okay? I think Arman's going to hurt him early on the feet at some point. He's going to get in close and land something big. And I think that's just enough. If he gets like a cut on the head of Islam, I think that's just enough to get across the finish line and get the job done. I picked Arman to be the champion in this division at the beginning of last year. The fight was going to happen. I was so excited. I thought Arman was going to win. Obviously, Islam gets hurt. Now it's happening now. I'm picking Arman to be the champion at the end of this year. Once again, I think Arman's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be a close fight. But, I mean, maybe Ilya Diego Lopez. But, like, if it's not for that fight, stylistically and just when you talk about how two well-rounded fighters, this is it. The next fight down, really good wrestlers, but these guys in this fight significantly better in striking. The improvements that both of these guys have made in striking is so impressive, and I'm going to take Arman. I will. Plus 290, I don't care. I'm taking Arman. And if you're a bettor, I'd bet on it. I would. I'd put some money down on it. I obviously bet responsibly, but I'd put money down. That's the play right there, in my opinion. That's the play. I think you can make some big-time money off that. How about the second fight? Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov. So, obviously, there's a theme here. Khabib's going to play a massive role in this fight. We've already got Islam. Now I've got Umar. So, we're going to find, if those two guys win, I mean, there's really no conversation to be had about, like, the most dominant, like, style of fighting and camp and last name and any of those. These two guys, and they already are, but if they win, I mean, far and away. Like, I love the fighting nerds and all the other camps and anything, but man, this family. And then you look at, like, what Bilal going there to train before the fight against Leon, and then how Bilal looked, how different Bilal looked. Man, it's going to be a lot of fun. That's a great storyline. Umar Merab. Okay, Merab, he's now beaten Aldo, Jan, Cejudo, and O'Malley in the role. He is the champion. He's the champion. Okay, he hasn't finished any of them, but he's been very dominant in each fight. Umar's only big win was against Corey Sandhagen, a fight in which he looked really good on the ground and on the feet. That win was so impressive. And before I go further, Umar minus 300, Merab plus 240. So Merab as the champ is plus 240. Umar was in a crazy part. I mean, he was fighting bums. He was minus 1,000, minus 150, minus 2,000 in all these fights. He got dropped in his last fight like that against a bum, and then got the Corey Sandhagen fight, and has one of just incredibly impressive performance against Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen is incredibly talented, and Umar Nurmagomedov not only dominated him on the ground, but might have outstruck him. And that was when it was like, oh my goodness, we are entering a phase in the UFC where these guys are not just wrestlers anymore. They are extremely talented strikers. And I'm talking about all of them. Not just this camp, but Umar, Islam. It's incredible. So that's Umar's big win. And because of that big win, he's the big favorite now. Which I find crazy, by the way. I mean, Umar dominated Sandhagen. Merab dominated O'Malley. But Umar is minus 300. So, I don't know. That to me is interesting. Merab's known for his relentless pressure, smothering grappling. I mean, just absolutely smothering what we saw against O'Malley. And obviously on the other side, Umar's more known for the technical striking, the strong wrestling, right? The underpins. Contrary to the Arman Islam fight, neither fighter's known for their stand-up. I mean, just it's gonna be what's so fast about this fight is like, what does the first minute looks like? Who shoots the takedown first? What does the striking look like? I mean, I think Umar has a big advantage. That's where he gets the minus 300. My guess is because Umar has, to me, a significant advantage on the feet. But that's going to be interesting, and it'll tell you a lot about what this fight will look like. Are they going to throw leg kicks? What does that look like? How do they get pressure? How do they do those things? And both these fighters, by the way, are so good at landing a punch and then going straight into the takedown. So watch out for that as well. Here's the difference between Umar and Merab on the ground. Both good wrestlers, but Merab just spams takedowns. And in order to break all these takedown records that he does, it means you can't dominate on top. Because if you dominate on top, you'll only have like 3 or 5 takedowns a fight because you dominate the round when you get the takedown. Merab's not like that. His opponents can get up against him when he takes them down. Umar's the opposite. Umar, when he gets on top, he is much stronger and much more likely to stay there for a long period of time. So let's get into the prediction. I'm picking Arman in the title fight, or in the first title fight. But I'll tell you this, it's not smart to pick against Khabib's camp. These guys are the most dependable, impressive, well-rounded fighters in the world. So I think Umar wins via unanimous decision. The one thing with Umar is he got knocked down by a really not good fighter. But Merab is not going to knock this guy down. He might get knocked down by someone else, O'Malley or something. Merab's not that guy. Well, we all know that, right? So I think Umar wins via unanimous decision. I think it's like 4-1 rounds in my opinion. And I think it's decisive. I don't think we're arguing about this finish the next time we see each other after this fight. Now down to the third fight. Another great fight. I mean, this card is loaded. Yuri Prochazka, who's plus 105 against Jamal Hill, who's minus 125. I call this fight 2 guys fighting to get knocked out by Alex Pereira once again. No, it seems like Pereira's going to get Ankalaev, but after that, maybe. It's a bleak outlook, but it's pretty true. It's pretty true. These guys are they're gonna get knocked out by Pereira again if they fight him. Both guys. It's just the truth. It seemed like Jamal Hill was going to be the future of the light heavyweight division for a bit. But it's clear that that's obviously not the case anymore. And honestly, when you look back at his past wins, none of them hold much weight anymore. He probably took the Pereira fight too soon. He didn't look in the best shape walking into that fight. And he's now kind of known as the guy with a podcast, the guy who got mad at a fan of his on Twitter one time because he misunderstood something, the guy who's just like kind of cringe and calling out Alex Pereira. That's a big change over the past year. That's who he is now. Before, it was a lot different. How about Yuri Prochazka? He's got plenty of draw. But in order to keep that, he needs to be able to beat guys like this. Like the Rakic fight, needs to be guys like that. Needs to be guys like Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz, or at least be in a war. The fight at least needs to be a war. Because the Rakic fight was close to Rakic just dominating, and then Yuri turned it around and got the finish. But, like, if Yuri just gets dominated by Rakic, I'm sorry, but the aura's gone. And that's what's at play in this fight again. But don't be fooled. The Alex Pereira fights have rejuvenated this guy's career. He got knocked out once. He got knocked out twice by Alex Pereira. But they've changed his career for the better, without a doubt. And guys like Pereira can do that. They light up a division. Even Jamal Hill, much more well-known than he ever would be without Alex Pereira. Okay? And here's the other thing about Yuri. He's won 14 straight fights against guys not named Alex Pereira. It's pretty impressive. But here's the outlook for the division. Pereira's looming at the top. These guys do not have much of a chance at the belt. Both of their careers have been improved and rejuvenated because of Pereira, and they're more well-known and loved and hated, in a sense, than they ever would have been without their bouts with Alex Pereira. This is a fight where Jamal Hill, stylistically, is going to get into technical striking. That's what he's always been. And Yuri Prochazka is going to have just the most odd style of striking. I'm convinced this guy's never actually been to an MMA gym and just worked out. He just does the craziest workouts, and he is so unpredictable. And that's why it's genuinely, there's probably not a harder guy to predict fights, besides the fact that he's 30-5 and has just like dominated everyone. But in fights like this, where it's like he's actually a slight underdog, it's like kind of 50-50, it's so hard to pick a fight. Because it's like, could Hill just dominate him in like the technical aspect and just beat him? Yes. Could Prochazka be down 2 rounds to nothing and come back and do something crazy? Absolutely. Wouldn't surprise any of us. Even the second time he fought Pereira. I remember me and Jackson were talking before the fight, and we're like, wouldn't be surprised if he did it. Like, Pereira feels like he's on one of the craziest MMA runs of all time. But if Yuri Prochazka knocked him out, we wouldn't be surprised. It's just part of his personality. Here's what I think. Yuri wins via TKO. He's going to leave some openings. I don't think Hill's going to take advantage of them. And I think he gets a 3rd round finish. What happens after that, we can discuss that after the fight. But I think he gets a 3rd round TKO. So moving on, Beneil Dariush and Renato Moicano. Another great fight. This card is loaded. Beneil Dariush is making his return after the brutal losses to Sarukian and Oliveira. He's on a big winning streak. Now he's lost all momentum in the division that he did have. And for Moicano, he's on the other side. His last 2 fights was the comeback victory against Jalen Turner and the dominant win over Benoit Saint Denis. That was such an impressive win. There was the doctor stoppage, all the bleeding. Here's the thing about him. He's got a giant personality and is, in my opinion, the most talented mic, trash talker, post-fight, whatever that is with Joe Rogan that we have now and that we've seen in a long time in the UFC. I still have big-time questions about whether Moicano can compete. He could have easily lost to Jalen Turner, right? And I think I have major questions about who Benoit Saint Denis is, especially on the ground. And so that's where I have questions. I mean, if Jalen Turner knocked him down and then just like went and got on him, he could have probably got a TKO. And Jalen Turner's like kind of a gatekeeper. So I have questions about Moicano, but I think once again, this matchup favors him. He's minus 175, Dariush is plus 145. But I'm giving Moicano the win. I think it's a unanimous decision. I think he gets a takedown. I think the fight looks somewhat similar to the BSD fight. And I think Beneil Dariush, who's a very impressive fighter, by the way, I just think those losses are going to derail his career, unfortunately. But just a fantastic fight once again. Here's what Dan Hooker said about the fight. I thought this was interesting. And I quote this. He said, "The way in which Moicano beat BSD, Jalen Turner, and Drew Dober, the style in which he enacted to get those 3 wins, he cannot do against Beneil Dariush." He said this on Adesanya's YouTube channel. Here's the quote starting back up. He cannot out-grapple Beneil Dariush like he out-grappled those three guys because he's too good. In my opinion, Beneil is technically the best grappler, I would say. Do I see Moicano out-grappling Dariush? Nah. Do I see him even out-striking him? That would be a hard night in the office. Beneil, obviously, the question there is about his chin, right? But is Moicano in any way, shape, or form a talented striker? No. You cannot say he is. He said, I feel like Dariush just shuts Moicano's game down. Hooker added, I feel like positionally he's better on the feet. I don't even see how Moicano gets Beneil to the ground, let alone hold him on the ground. I just believe Beneil shuts down Moicano and kind of cruises to victory and gets back in the win column. So that is what Dan Hooker had to say about this fight. Disagreeing with me, I'm picking Moicano. He's picking Dariush, but I understand the reason why. We'll revisit that quote after the fight and see how it goes. Next fight, first fight on the main card, Kevin Holland and Reiner de Ridder. This guy is a big-time prospect, and we're going to find out a lot about him. De Ridder, minus 115, Holland, minus 105. So a 50-50 fight. And stylistically, another one. Just going to be fascinating to see how this fight goes. All the way down, just stylistically, Islam Arman, so similar. Merab Umar, so similar. Yuri Prochazka, different, but both strikers. Dariush Moicano, so similar. And now Holland and De Ridder, very similar. Going to be an awesome fight. You've got two guys who are extremely talented on the ground, and we're going to learn if De Ridder can compete there. This is the perfect kind of fight for Kevin Holland. Although we're going to see again how good Kevin Holland. I think we're going to see how good Kevin Holland is. He's so good on the ground. He just doesn't use it as much as he should because he likes to be a fan favorite and strike and do all those fun things. Holland is a guy, I've said this before, he beats guys who he's better than and loses to guys he's worse than. Literally, it's foolproof every time. I don't know whether he's better than De Ridder or De Ridder's better than him, but I promise you, he doesn't upset guys that are better than him, and he dominates guys that are not as good as him. So that's, I'm gonna pick Kevin Holland. I think he shows out. I think he kind of stuns the 18-2 De Ridder here, and he gets the victory. We're gonna see how good of a grappler this guy is. And then we hop on to the prelims. Pretty solid prelim card. We've got our guy Peyton Talbot, who is 9-0, minus 1,300 in this fight. And he's going to easily move to 10-0 here. This is the closest thing we've seen to O'Malley at this point in his career. Dominating on the feet. And for his size, his power is just insane. And he's really one of the few guys in the sport who you'll see a minus 1,300 by. I mentioned Umar was just there a couple fights ago. Hamzat was there, fights ago against guys not as good, but it's rare you see stuff like that. And it's clear he's one of those guys. Next fight down, Jailton Almeida and Sergey Spivak, a heavyweight bout. If you're going to start watching this card late, make sure to catch the Talbot fight, but don't need to see this fight. Snooze fest. I think Almeida's going to win. He's going to win. He's minus 525, dominant on the ground. The only thing I have to say about this fight is I think he should win. I think if he wins, he should get on the mic, call out Volkov. This is a guy who needs to find the right stylistic fights for him, and the guys like Volkov in the heavyweight division, I think, are fresh meat for Jailton Almeida. I think he would out-wrestle him all day, and that'd be a perfect fight for him. With that being said, do not hold your breath for a good fight there. So, there you go. I mean, can't wait for this. We're finally back. Like I said, the main card, just stylistically, and then Talbot bringing us into the main card, it just does not get much better than this. I mean, these are just some, just overall, casual fan tuning in type of power pay-per-view. It's not that. But for a sicko, hardcore UFC fan, this is just about all you could ask for. I mean, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. And hopefully Sunday or Saturday night after the fights, I will have a post-show recapping everything that we saw, but I am just so happy to be back. But for now, I'm Austin Holman. This has been Fight Talk. Thanks for tuning in.